it is a product, but their project and make it a product. And I don't hesitate to spend extra time because it's to their benefit when it gets all done. I can go in with a smile and talk to them about what all it's going to look as beautiful as it can be because I've spent enough time to make it that way.
And more talk about landscaping and your landscape and maybe some of the mistakes you make and why fall might be a good time to put some plants in with Fred Howard, the Ohio nurseryman, and Dave Peabody from Peabody Landscape. Stick with us on Plant Talk.
This summer at Franklin Park Conservatory and Botanical Gardens, the gardens are in full color. Welcome its tropical and native butterflies in flight in the indoor Pacific Island Water Garden. View the conservatory's bonsai collection and experience the exhibition Origami in the Garden. Find details at spconservatory.org.
And welcome back to Plant Talk. Mark News here alongside Fred Howard, the Ohio nurseryman. And our special guest today, we've been picking his brain, Dave Peabody from Peabody Landscape. Dave, what are some of the big mistakes that people make when they go out and start planning a new design?
Not hiring a professional to help them with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
quite
think,
honestly.
Yeah. That's coming from a homeowner, which is Mark in this case, to both of us. And I think that's absolutely right. We did not rehearse this, folks. Dave and I would agree with that being the first and most important thing, period.
Yeah, the common mistakes are you see plant material that's planted too closely together. When we develop a design, we make sure that it shows the maturity of the plant 5 to 7 years down the road, so that way it allows space for the plants to grow. And that in itself, they could spend way too much money up front. And then again, the maintenance part of it. So the more plants you have out there, the more maintenance you're going to have to deal with. So the first and foremost element as far as minimizing mistakes is get a professional plan done.
Now, I agree with you, Dave, at 100%. And we're talking about now a plan that can be drawn by a horticulturist, or it can be drawn by a landscape architect, or my preference is a person that has experience in both sides of that background. I think both are important. Then they know the spacing the plant should have. They know the lay of the land and how to get the low spots out and drain them from the architectural standpoint and so on. So I think it requires. Now, not that young people shouldn't be given a chance. They've got to learn. I know I stayed young for a long time in some respects. But that's what the client has to try to understand and give you, the designer, a chance to explain to them how you can, it's going to cost, but how you can save them money in the long run by doing things right, by knowing what's going on.
Yeah, that's a good point. One element that I dealt with, or a situation rather, about a week ago with a close friend of mine who was going to be top seeding his lawn, and he showed me this bag of grass seed, and I was like, you don't want to put that down. And it was out of one of the department stores, big boxes, if you will, and he bought this seed, and I said it was putting a turf type tall fescue in a blue lawn.
Oh boy, yeah,
Kentucky bluegrass lawn, and it just would have made a mess. So that in itself, he consulted me and asked me what I thought, and I stopped him and actually provided him some good grass seed, a blend of grass seed, not a mix of grass seed that helps with sustaining that bluegrass that he's looking for.
I have a neighbor, and he's used to me picking on him. I don't use his name, but let's just say he's brilliant in his field, and yet he has the same kind of a problem in terms of brilliance in his field does not let him know about grass seed blends and plant root zones and zonal qualities of horticultural entities and so on. And he, after knowing me long enough and so on and teasing him enough, he's begun to ask questions. And that's what we hope everybody does right at the very beginning.
And, Dave, you've been doing this for, you said, 27 years. What are some of the new trends and some of the big changes you've seen over the years?
Well, I had addressed it a little bit earlier. You're seeing more and more people utilizing plant material that's going to be highlighted and carry the color through the course of one season to the next, and we're seeing more and more of the stavation situations where people are really developing some really unique outdoor living environments that really take them from the inside of the house to the outside of the house so that they can spend more time relaxing in their most comfortable environment, their home.
And even, I would add to that, based on Ohio in general, north to south, it varies by a couple of weeks, but by and large, we have 7 months of tentative outdoor use and 5 months indoors. And that's why a good designer can combine these things. Get you outdoors into these enclosures, the spaces, the rooms, the overheads, cooking and grilling and so on, as well as the matter of the 5 months that is, let's just say, less than colorful. So that being said, and we're talking plants now doing part of this job, what you mentioned earlier in between radio comments here about fall is for planting or planting in the fall. Explain a little bit about that, Dave, why you think it is so good.
Well, the plants are going into their dormancy, first of all. And so as they're going into dormancy, it's similar to that of somebody going under an operation, with anesthetic.
Yeah.
And they get put down by the anesthesiologist. Well, the plants are doing that in their own natural way. They're going to sleep for the wintertime.
Right.
So the best time to transplant a tree is when they're dormant. And that period is from October all the way through March, early April the next year. Given the fact you don't want to obviously transplant plants when it's frozen because the root balls will freeze and the roots will freeze, so that's not a good time to do that. One thing people need to keep in mind is that the root systems are always growing. A little bit here, little bit there, but they're always growing. So
it's millimicrons sometimes, Dave, and I've tried to explain that over especially the winter periods of our programming, where it's down maybe in the winter time when the ground is hovering at 40 degrees, unless absolutely frozen, that the growth of the roots may be in millimicrons per week, but they are indeed still functioning, which is why fall is good for planting. It gets them established before spring, and it's also why, even though your neighbors will think you're nuts, if you get a break in the weather, put on your old heavy navy pea jacket and go out with a hose or a bucket and water, especially some of the new things, so that those roots stay in a good growing medium all through the whole course of the winter.
Correct. Given the fact that also you have a nice surprise when you get that tree blooming in the spring, people have something to look forward to.
That's right.
One annual that we actually are promoting more and more that seems to be surviving the milder winters that we're having is pansies.
Yes.
If you do fall planting of pansies, probably should have done it a week or two ago, but you still might be able to get it in, is get the pansies established, and you'll get a nice floral color out of them, blanket in the springtime.
I've been doing that for years, David, and I do plant a little later after the annuals have been frozen out, but I do it by getting them in and then sufficient moisture until they freeze in, then they don't pop out, and I get color almost at Christmas time and then again in March sometimes from those.
Correct.
Well, we've had a lot of great information on landscaping today. Our special guest on the program has been Dave Peabody from Peabody Landscaping. And Dave, what's your phone number if people would like to get a hold of Peabody Landscape?
We're at 614-488-2877. And one thing we do have going on today that they may want to come out and check us out is we do have a big tree sale going on.
Great.
So they can choose from above ground about 300 trees and in ground about 2,000 trees.
Well, that's enough to cause confusion. So go in with your eyes open on what you'd like to have, when you'd like it to bloom, and the stature it needs to have. And most especially, if you're planting back toward those utility lines, stick with trees that don't go above 25 feet. But in the meantime, fall's a fantastic time to get them and saving a buck and getting them started at the right time.
And, of course, Fred's to-do list coming up next on Plant Talk.
This summer at Franklin Park Conservatory and Botanical Gardens, the gardens are in full color. Walk amidst tropical and native butterflies in flight in the indoor Pacific Island Water Garden. View the conservatory's bonsai collection and experience the exhibition Origami in the Garden. Find details at fpconservatory.org.
Mark, hear me. You've got to mow right on through Thanksgiving, work off that great, big, wonderful dinner, and then on top of that, and that's the truth, not just joking with Mark, but on top of that, then proceed with that new landscape planting. You have time to get a design and or in by now or even for spring planting. Get that design done first. Have your ideas made up on what you'd like to have. Let the designer work out the details of that. Proceed with planting. Proceed with weed killing. We are not going to necessarily see the weed die this time of year and from now on, but it may be made so ill with appropriate herbicides on it that it just won't come back in the spring. I know I've got some that I hope react that way. Then back to planting smaller perennials, and ground covers. I think now, with a few small exceptions, something you can watch closely, you should start to back off on the digging and dividing of perennials, hold back on the planting of at least short-rooted or shallow-rooted plants, and then ground covers in massive areas, probably best to start thinking about fall or properly mulched and watered and so on. Continue to water as it is necessary. We have plants' roots growing, as we spoke a little bit ago, all through the entire year. Not much in the wintertime, but still actually functioning. Literally, there are roots dying and growing every day of the year, every time of the day. Then, enjoy the fall colors. Actually, kick back from your regular routine. Go out either in your backyard, your community for a good risky walk, or out in your car and look at fall colors. See the beauties that Mother Nature has dealt with as well as the things we can handle with. And then bring in any of the last remnants of your tender plants before Mother Nature cooks them.
And for Fred Howard, the Ohio Nurseryman, I'm Mark Noose. We'd like to thank again our special guest, Dave Peabody, for being here. We'll see you again next week for another edition of Plant Talk.
Plant Talk is sponsored by Franklin Park Conservatory and Botanical Gardens, fpconservatory.org. If you have a question for Fred for a future show, go to our Facebook page and ask away. We value your comments about the show, so please tell us what you think by writing a review on iTunes. This helps others find out about Plant Talk. You can find out more about Plant Talk on our website at planttalkradio.com.